My name is Kahsennenhawe Sky-Deer. I'm 44 years old, Wolf Clan, and the former Grand Chief of the Mohawk Council of Kahnawà. Becoming the first woman Grand Chief was definitely a pivotal moment in my life. You know, for most people, it was still kind of young, but I feel like I'm an old soul, and I've been, you know, just blessed with an amazing life path. When I think about the person who has played the most significant role in my life, it's got to be my mother, who has had my back through thick and thin, who still is there for me whenever I need her. Somebody who was a single mom, right? My parents separated when I was very young, hence the hyphenation of my name, Sky-Deer. She, you know, was always working, a hard-working woman, right? She worked multiple jobs to put food on the table, to take care of me, to put a home over my head. And then because she was heavily involved in education and was a truant officer, a guidance counselor, and was constantly going to school, and I was like, why did you go to school so much? And she was like, well, you know, I want to continue to further myself and learn. So, you know, that was my first role model about the importance of education and what I needed to do for my future.
School, school, school.
Yeah, and then of course the big one.
Yeah.
The diploma from...
I drilled that into her whole life. Go to school, go to school. I made her earn whatever she got. It wasn't just everything given.
I find it interesting that we're sitting here on this island doing this, given everything that it represents. You know, it's built out of, a lot of people don't know, but it's built out of all the rocks and the dirt that was dug out of the seaway, land that was stolen from us, and they covered up like the indigenous part of who we are, these 4 little islands, and they used all that stuff to cover it up. And then when I was growing up, it was that raw trauma. It was just like everybody remembered what happened, and then over the years, it's changed to where now it's become what it is, where it's got trees, there's grass, there's life here again.
And I think a lot of people don't know the history, obviously, of the Seaway and the fact of the expropriations that took place and how many people were literally removed and displaced from their homes.
I got involved in public life, I guess you could say, in governance through the MCK as a researcher, as basically assisting the development of that institution, right, in its earlier phases there in the 80s. The Mohawk Council was the organization that you worked through to do those things. But since then, though, we've worked on the idea of kind of running against the capacity of that to take us further. We are pushing against that, the limits of that system. And you were the Grand Chief at a time when it became a pivotal moment. You were one of the leaders in the community who took it as a challenge to try to move this community away from the Indian Act and the remnants of that colonial control. And I have so much respect for you for being in that position. I always wonder, like, where did you get that from? Like that idea of, I'm going to commit myself to be the last Grand Chief of the Indian Act. It didn't happen that way, but it is on that pathway, and you were instrumental to that.
You know, I don't know if you know this, but I did have a summer job at the MCK in 1998, and I worked for IRT, Intergovernmental Relations Team, so that was my first exposure to the issues that was happening in the community. And what's crazy is it's still the same things, right? Lands, membership, governance, so all of the big ticket items that we're dealing with from a federal level of them having this imposition of, you know, like a kind of control. And really the Seaway was the start of that, right? That's how they implemented the certificates of possession so that they were able to do land grabs from individuals. Because if it's collectively owned, it was more of a challenge, right? And then understanding the issues of membership and identity and how we wanted to take control of that. Because right now, as it stands, you know, the Indian Act still can determine who is an Indian under that structure, which for us, we know our nationhood and our citizenship is something completely different. There's so much that we need to be doing to get land back. And I know as soon as settlers hear land back, it's like, oh my God, they're coming for my house, they're coming for my property. No, it's more of a recognition that, you know, these were our lands. They're our historical and traditional unceded territory, and we want you to recognize that and find a way for there to be a path of, like you said, this reconciliation or understanding.
What about you and your reflections on how it has been to work in this system as who you are?
In terms of what I felt in being the first woman Grand Chief that identified as Two-Spirit LGBTQ+, I didn't really get any kind of backlash in what I felt was a political realm of like dealing with government. But I think where I felt it the most was when young people in this community want to have their first Pride Parade. And obviously, you know, I'm gonna stand behind that and participate and so forth. And, you know, I kind of got deemed as I was pushing my gay agenda on the community and that I was the one that was behind this. And, you know, just the way people were so judgmental on social media. And I think that's been a real challenge in politics, not only in Indian country, but, you know, just around the world, of the way people are so comfortable now to say whatever they want on, you know, the keyboard without any kind of ramification or backlash
Without
or
being accountable.
Exactly,
Yeah.
accountability, you know. So I think the community has to take initiative, take the bull by the horns and figure out, well, what is it that we want? Do we want to be divided and, you know, kind of have all these separate groups in the community, or do we want to figure out what is the path forward? Because, you know, leaving a legacy that the next 7 generations will feel. How do we put our differences aside and find our collective similarities that will catapult us into, you know, the future?
The story that I was told by Tokwirdo Joe Norton, and it's this metaphor of the fire. Kawadzade, our families in the fire, the same root word, right? And so the fire being very strong at one point. And that's our language, our culture, our traditional cultural ways, our families, all that stuff, for having a good mind, all our teachings. And that's how our fire is strong. But what colonialism did is that people found their way in there who were against us, and they start kicking at it, and it got spread all around. And so you have all these embers. So they failed in extinguishing that fire. But we have to admit, it's still pretty scattered. It's not strong. And that's our job. Is so the way I look at it, I say, go find one of those embers and bring it back to life. And that's, you're doing your part. And then find your way back to the central fire of your community or your nation and put it in with the others and figure out a way to make it work with everybody else that's doing their part.
There's still so much work to be done, and the current reality of what we're seeing with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit, that we are a vulnerable population. We are at risk. Our sisters are being taken. It's a scary thought. You know, you could even see it when, say, a white girl goes missing. The way the police deploy and the investigations and everything that goes into that. But when our women go missing, they're not given the same kind of attention, the same kind of treatment. And somehow we have to change that narrative that our lives do matter, right? It's not just Indigenous, all children, all lives matter. And that we're all part of creation. We're all a part of, you know, this sacred energy and this amazing experience of life, you know, spirit beings having a human experience. So we have to change the way we treat each other, come from a place of more love and respect, and that everybody has a role to play here, that they've all been given these gifts, and that, you know, I think our women and girls and Two-Spirit people, we have to love and appreciate them as well, because they have a role to play and they're a part of us. And yeah, we all got to take care of each other. That's the inevitable message.